going down, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Commander Ad Populum. Commander for the people, by the people, for the people. This is episode number 24. My name is Ryan. Welcome. It's good to have you. Welcome if you're new. Welcome back if you're not new. If you're a returning listener, I very much appreciate that. If this is your first Commander Ad Populum, I very much appreciate that too. Before we get into our three sections of the show, we got a little bit of business to cover. Big thank you, first of all, to FusionGamingOnline.com. They are the official sponsor of Commander Ad Populum. You can go there for all of your gaming needs. Second big thank you, all of the patrons. You guys make it all possible every week. I couldn't do it without you. We've got a great community on the Discord. That's one of the Patreon benefits. If you head over to patreon.com/cadpopcast, consider pledging. It helps out a lot. A few bucks a month. It goes a long way to keep the shows coming out. Please do head over to the Patreon page. There are altered art tutorial videos there, along with, like I said, a few other benefits to patrons that I think everybody enjoys. If you're into my altered art, I'm going to call it content. I mean, it's cards and it's video content, so I'm going to call it content. And I very much appreciate all the patrons. So patreon.com/cadpopcast, CADPOPCAST. Same handle on Twitter, same handle, or you could search Commander Ad Populum on Facebook. There are threads on both of those social media platforms for this episode and every other episode. Final big thank you, everybody who reached out or said that they liked the last two episodes with Tony. Again, that really meant a lot to me to have that time with Tony and to talk to him. And we've actually discussed, even since the episode, about him coming back on and talking directly how magic has aided him in his recovery. So I think that kind of stuff is super interesting because there is more to this game than just playing the game. And it is friends, it's family, it's self-help or help for others. If you've listened to any of the other episodes where we've talked about this kind of stuff, I'm thinking about episode 4 where we talked about magic helping foster kids, episode 15 and 16 was when my friend Jesse came on, and we talked about how magic has helped him through his struggles with clinical depression and anxiety. So this is a great game. I don't know every game on the planet, but I'm pretty sure Magic is one of the best ones. Top 10 games for sure, all time ever on the planet. So if you agree with that statement, let me know on Twitter or on Facebook. And of course, if you have any of your own struggles or any time in your life where Magic has helped you at all, make sure you let me know on the Twitter or Facebook threads for episode 23, 22, 24, whichever episode that you found some connection to. That all being said, we've got kind of a little bit of a different community section. I'd like to talk about my own Magic collection. We're going to get to it just after this. So I'm sorting my collection, and I've been playing Magic since 98, 99, all the way through to about 2004, 4, then I took off till about 2007. So that's a lot of years. There was some time off. When I got back into the game, I kind of bought into some of what I missed a little bit. Some Shocklands, some of the original Ravnica, some fairy stuff from Lorwyn Block, that kind of thing. Nothing major, but over the years and since I've started to play Commander exclusively, I mean, you pick up stuff from Lorwyn, Morningtide, Shadowmoor, Eventide. You pick up stuff from Ravnica because those are prolific and powerful sets in Magic's past, and they have cards that everybody wants to play. So in doing all of that and not selling out of Magic when I stopped playing, it kind of just tapered itself out of my life. It faded out, and then it kind of just faded back in a few years later. And in doing that, I never sold any of my stuff. And I had a reasonable way to organize my collection way back in the day. A series of boxes that were kind of before I knew, because I was younger, kind of before I knew about like the long boxes and card organization and dividers and having different binders for different formats or colors or rarities of cards, all that stuff, right? Because I'm young and I kind of just keep everything in a box. You know, the classic cards wrapped in a rubber band, unsleeved type scenario. Yeah, that was me. I'm sure it was everybody else too. Don't lie. So I had a series of boxes. They had dividers that I made out of cardboard labeled with what set they were. Stuff was sorted by set. And then things of particular value were in a dedicated trade box or eventually dedicated trade binder. Because you're young or you're just getting back into the game, you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money. You make a binder of like your good stuff, and you could show that off to guarantee a trade at an F&M or at an event that you're at or what have you. So fast forward, after the Lorman block into Shard's block, into Zendikar, into, I want to say, Mirrodin Besieged or Innistrad. I don't remember which one was which, but I continued to play more and more and more. And through this time, coming out of university, I had a job and money, and you're playing F&Ms and pre-releases and launch parties. I started playing Commander, and we're going to talk about that in the set retro because my very first Commander is today, and I'm excited. The point is, through this all time, from 98 all the way to 2019, I've gained quite a bit of cards, and you buy collections and you sort through bulk and you end up keeping it all because you feel guilty about, hucking away white bordered commons from 8th edition or from 5th edition. Like I said over the last couple weeks with Tony, we all kind of have hoarding tendencies as gamers. We do, whether we like to admit it or not. So as a means to curb this, I've been sorting my collection, and I highly recommend that you do it too, because you're going to find stuff in there that you don't even remember that you have. Some of it's going to have monetary value. Some of it's going to have sentimental value. Both of those are important. You can trade them in. You can find cards to paint like I do for the Commander Cookout Facebook auctions every Thursday. That's where a lot of the upcoming cards over the next month are going to come from, is me sorting my collection, which is great, because I get to take everything that I'm never going to play with or paint or has otherwise no value to me, and I'm going to donate those. And somebody else is maybe going to find pleasure in them. Somebody else is going to maybe sift through them and build collections. And the cards are going to be better served elsewhere than just sitting in a box in my closet like they have for the last 10 years. And I highly recommend that people do this, because it is, I tell you people, it is liberating. It's liberating to do this, and it takes time. I'm sure some of why I feel so good is I'm actually accomplishing something, like I'm doing some fall cleaning, but it's in a area of my life that I want to have organized, and I enjoy touching cards and reminiscing over old things and memories and all those things. I mean, it's been fun. I've been at it now over maybe three separate sessions, maybe 11 or 12 hours, and so far I've sorted rares from Homelands, The Dark, Fallen Empires, Ice Age, Alliance, Mirage, Visions, Weatherlight, Tempest. The same sets go for commons and uncommons. I've organized my Invasion, Planeshift, Apocalypse, Odyssey, Torment, Judgment, Onslaught, Legions, Scourge, Zendikar, Worldwake, and Dominaria sets. And I'm going through now to sort everything by color and alphabetize, because back in the day, cards didn't have collector numbers on them, so you had to do things the hard way. So that's where I'm at. The table in my basement, like by the bar, covered in cards, covered in binders. It's been great. I found a ton of cards that I forgot existed, forgot had, that art. I gave a bunch to my little guy. He's got some new cards for his collection. It's been a total fun process, and the best part about it is I'm making space in my magic room, office, filing cabinet, closet for new stuff to come in. I'm going to be donating the cards that I'm kind of ridding of from myself for somebody to either do the same thing I'm doing or to find better use than collecting dust. And I am increasing the value of my collection if I can demonstrate, for example, that I have an entire set of Ice Age. If I have an entire set of Ice Age combined in one spot, box or binder, you name it, if I ever have to flip that, that's worth more than me putting in a Craigslist ad or whatever, Facebook Marketplace ad, tons of cards from Ice Age, tons of cards from Alliances, right? People only care about a few cards from those sets, and if I can confirm through photographic evidence of binders that I have Force of Will in my Alliances set, if I have Lake of the Dead in my Alliances set, that's worth more to a potential buyer if I ever have to flip the collection than just a box that I'm claiming has tons of Alliance stuff in it. So Again, sort your collections as new stuff comes in, organize it. If you are the type of person that buys a box or two or a case and you crack all those packs when you have a new set launched, keep them organized and get them in a binder or a box. Have them retain that value, and anything that you're not going to play with for the rest of forever, get it into the hands of somebody less fortunate than you. Maybe somebody who can't afford the cards, maybe some kid at the hospital. You go down there at Christmas time and they have those little angels that people, the kids that are in the hospital, they write what they want for Christmas. Some kids want gaming supplies, some kids want dice, some kids want cards, some kids want Lego. I mean, you name it, kids want all kinds of different things. Maybe some kids want magic cards. So that's important for me to say because, I mean, we are coming up into the fall. People are thinking about Christmas shopping. Lots of times people aren't thinking about less fortunate people than them during the holidays because they're thinking about what they want to buy for their loved ones. So maybe sorting your collection will brighten up somebody's holiday or make somebody happy at your local game store if that's where you take them. Think about it. Do some work, take some time. Instead of watching Netflix for 8 hours on a Sunday night, get your collection out. Okay, for today's technical section, we're going to go back to the topic I brought up a couple weeks ago about asking people why they're attacking you, and it's continued to show me some success. I've had a few more F&Ms under my belt, a few more Tuesday night magics under my belt. That's the day that I play with the CCO Dude Bros. One of those Tuesdays was exclusively 3-player games. There were 7 of us, and I was in the game that had the 3-person pods. So 3-person pods are always a little bit tricky because there is somebody that is clearly winning and it kind of turns into an arch enemy. And that's historically, I think, why most people say that they like 4 or 5-person pods compared to 3-person pods. So over the last couple sessions I've played Magic, I've exclusively been playing Savine the Chronoclasm from M19. He is Jeskai and 2, so he's 5 mana total for a 2/2. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him. All damage. And the first spell that you cast from your graveyard every turn, you double it. So it's kind of cool. He is, according to EDHREC.com, the least built legendary creature out of the Jeskai deck. So of course I wanted to play the least popular thing, just to be different, of course. So I packed in a couple extra like X damage spells, Rolling Earthquake and Fault Line, things like that. And I built the deck. I maybe swapped 20 to 25 cards out, and then I improved the mana base. The deck came stock with 40 lands, mostly basics. I swapped a bunch of those out for a few fetch lands that I had laying around, a couple shock lands, and randomly I just had a plateau laying around, so I put a plateau in there. That's cool, right? Mana base is pretty cool. Might be a little bit light on red still, now that I put a little bit more of those X damage spells in there, but it runs pretty sweet. It's really slow, but there are a lot of Pillow Fort and Sweeper type effects to keep me alive to the late game when I can maybe double or triple with a bonus round an Earthquake. When I'm at more life than everybody else, I just win. Kind of a Brando from CCO move, but it is a fun way to play Magic. Anyways, part of the strategy of the deck is to not get attacked. And you can do so by just making attacks unprofitable or expensive with something like Ghostly Prison and Propaganda. I do have Pramicon Sky Rampart in there where you can only attack left or right, and that keeps at least one other player or 2 other players off my back, and I just try and make it to the late game. But if I'm not playing Pramicon, I do ask the question, why are you attacking me? I'm not doing anything. Or do you see what this guy's doing? And it has continued to show me success, like I say. So I'm still looking into that, and I'm still probably going to report back on air about that. Maybe 2 more times just to kind of give you a trend of 3 separate instances that it's working, and then maybe close the loop with the last one saying, yep, this works. This is a proven political strategy that I've used for X amount of months in different scenarios. So again, ask the question, why are you attacking me? Or get somebody to explain their reasoning behind attacking, and you can kind of politically rebuttal them with, well, what about this? Did you consider XYZ thing in your decision to attack me, maybe you should send that attacker this way because this player's got this going on. It's far more powerful than what I'm doing. You'll be surprised how many people kind of tweak their attacks slightly. And if, like I said last time I talked about this, if you can save yourself 5 or 6, 10 damage a game this way over the course of a night or a month, that's going to add up to multiple game wins. If you're saving yourselves 40 life a night across multiple games, eventually that's going to equate to a win. 40 life in a month is going to be the functional equivalent of a win. Incremental advantages is how you start to become a better Magic player. So look for those when you can see them. Take advantage of them when the opportunity presents itself. That being said, we are going to move straight into our set retrospective today. We are getting into it, and I almost wanted to do an entire episode just for this set. If anybody's interested in, like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, a second show per week that is just a set retrospective. I know I said a couple weeks ago that it was going to be a deck tech show for the second show per week when I hit that stretch goal on Patreon. But maybe an idea, if anybody's into it, would be to mix it up. Set retro, deck tech. Maybe 2 of each per month, alternating. If you want a more in-depth set retro, let me know in the comments. Let me know on Twitter, because I'd love to give that to you, because it's sets like today, Urza's Saga, that you just can't cover in the 10 minutes that I have to do it. So we're going to get to it just after this. Oh baby, this is it. Urza's Saga. Arguably, and let me know on Twitter, arguably the most powerful year in Magic the Gathering history. And it all started fall set, October 1998. This is the big fall set for 98. Urza's Saga. It kicks off the Urza block, or the artifact block, it's sometimes known as. And we've got some gems. So 350 black bordered cards, great art direction, some classics like Kev Walker, one of my favorite Magic artists, Ron Spencer, my actual favorite Magic artist. They were both very prolific in this set, and it's great. I love it. This is one of my favorite sets. This is just before I started playing, and some believe that Urza's Saga, or Urza block in general, being so powerful is the reason that Mercadian Masks and Invasion are so underpowered. Masks more so than Invasion block, but remember how Standard rotated at the time. You had big set, little set, little set, Urza's Saga, Urza's Legacy, Urza's Destiny, in Standard at the same time as Tempest block, for example, that we just covered. And then when Tempest rotated out, Masks rotated in, and that severely powered down the format. Then when Urza block rotated out, Invasion block rotated in, so you had Masks Invasion block Standard as a means to introduce more fun, whimsical, powered down Magic as to not scare people away from what was known as Combo Winter. And some people who are newer to Magic might have only heard that name before, but what that is the winter of 98. So December of 98, the DCI banned a whole swath of Magic cards from Standard because Urza's Saga just destroyed the format. And we're going to talk about some of those cards because, surprise, powerful cards in Standard and Extended and Vintage happen to be good in Commander. But before we get into any single card discussions and the legendary creatures, I wanted to talk just quick about the storyline, because the Urza block kind of departs from what we were just talking about with Gerard and Cissé and the Weatherlight crew. At the end of the Stronghold story, when the Weatherlight flies through the portal and they leave Urte back on Wrath, the story just leaves you hanging. Where do they go? We don't know. And then the following fall, we do Urza's Saga. And this is a look backwards in time. It was described to a time several hundred years after the Brothers' War, when Urza was traveling the plains, fighting Phyrexians, and we are really actually introduced to some of the places that we all know and love from classic Magic. Serra's Realm, we follow Urza, we get to know the Phyrexians more, we see a ton of cards in Urza block in general that show us Phyrexians and talk about Yawgmoth and the Phyrexians in the flavor text, and it was oozing with flavor, oozing with power, new mechanics, new creature types. the whole shebang. So let's get into it. We have cycling lands, and I think that these are the first time we've ever seen cycling lands. Now we've got a ton of them. But back in the day, we had drifting meadow, remote isle, polluted mire, smoldering crater, and slippery karst. One for each color, and they cycled for 2 colorless, so you can discard them, pay the cycling cost, draw a card. This is the first time we saw this on lands, I think. I might be wrong, but we see it lots now. We've got them in Modern. We had them in Onslaught, and they weren't legal in Modern until we got them in Modern Horizons. People play them along with Life from the Loam. We've got lands that have basic land cycling. We've got the Commander one that everybody plays. It's got basic land cycling for 2, so it's essentially these, but you can search your library instead of just drawing a card. So these kind of paved the way for cycling on lands, or cycling on things that weren't permanents. I know lands are permanents, but you guys know what I mean. Now, the second set of lands that I want to talk about are maybe the most famous lands in all of Commander. They were part of a cycle, and they are Gaia's Cradle, Phyrexian Tower, Sarah's Sanctum. The blue one's banned, that's Tolarian Academy, and everybody always forgets about what the red one is. Dun da da da! Shivan Gorge. Somebody got the short end of the stick. So let's break down these lands a little bit. Gaia's Cradle. It's like $400 or whatever. People say, oh, it should be banned in Commander. If Tolarian Academy's banned, Gaia's Cradle should be banned. So people say that all the time, but you tap it for a green for each creature you control. Very powerful. Tolarian Academy works the same way, except you get a blue for each artifact you control. The difference is you can get like a ton of artifacts for 0 mana, and you can tap Tolarian Academy for a bunch of blue on turn 1. This is the card, or one of the cards, that actually led to Combo Winter. This along with Mox Diamond and Lotus Petal, and in the next set, Memory Jar, you could drop a Tolarian Academy and tap it for a bunch of mana after you cast your Moxes and your Lotus Petals and stuff. You could dump your whole hand like that. Then you could Memory Jar to draw 7 more. And eventually on turn 1 or 2, that led to you making like 700 million mana and then Stroke of Geniusing your opponent out. And that was one of the combos in Combo Winter. Another one involved Phyrexian Tower, which is tap to add a colorless to your mana pool, or tap sack a creature to get black. And you could make a whole bunch of mana on turn 1. See my previous example. Sacrifice your Academy Rector and search for an enchantment, put it directly onto the battlefield. So Academy Rector was another card in Urza block that we're going to talk about in the next couple weeks. Sarah's Sanctum works the same way, gives you a white for each enchantment you control. So less powerful than the first 2, but still $100 and some card, and very powerful in Enchantress decks, or you know what, even in decks that just, if you're in white and you run like anywhere between 8 to 12 enchantments, like some white decks do, this card is probably just going to be better than a basic land if you don't see a whole bunch of ruination type effects. I mean, even if you're tapping it for 2 white or 3 white, you could also be tapping it for like 6 white. Very powerful. Great art too. I think that one might be my favorite art out of all 5 of these. So I wanted to talk about those real quick just because they are very prolific. They are very powerful. Now we can get into the 2 legendary creatures in this set. There's only 2. The first one, Karn Silver Golem, a 4/4 for 5. When Karn Silver Golem blocks or becomes blocked, it gets -4/+4 until end of turn. So when he blocks or becomes blocked, he becomes a 0/8. Very hard to kill, very flavorful because he took a vow of like no violence. So if he ever got into a fight, he would just let you hit him and he wouldn't hit you back, and he's real tough to kill because he's made out of metal. So super cool, a little bit of trivia there. He is one of, I think, 3 cards that are on the reserve list who actually were reprinted. And that was before Wizards changed their reprint policy with regards to the reserve list, such that they could print cards on the reserved list if they were in foil. The other 2 cards there, of course, are Mox Diamond, that has a foil reprinting, and Memory Jar that I talked about a couple minutes ago. So Karn, Memory Jar, Mox Diamond, I think those are the only 3 cards on the reserve list that have ever gotten a reprint. So just cool. I don't know, Karn's nothing really to write home about, but his other ability, 1, target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its casting cost until end of turn. So again, nothing super special, but making a non-artifact creature into an artifact creature does give you some combo potential. If you can untap creatures for some amount of mana, then you can tap that creature again for said mana. Like if you animated your Mana Vault or Thran Dynamo to tap to give you 3 mana, you could untap it for maybe 2 mana and you could make infinite mana like that. So there are some combos with Karn. Not my first commander ever though. That title belongs solely to Baron Master Wizard. 1/1 human wizard for blue 1. You can pay 2, sacrifice a permanent, return target creature to its owner's hand. Sacrifice a permanent, any permanent, return target creature to owner's hand. Any creature. Way back in the day, like 100 years ago, before Tolarian Academy was banned, before Emrakul was banned, yes, I was that guy. Tap my Tolarian Academy for 20 mana. Sacrifice it to Baron. Cast Emrakul. Take an extra turn. And maybe with some of my leftover mana, cast my Crucible of Worlds. Play my Tolarian Academy again. Tap it for 20. Draw 20 off of a Stroke of Genius. I'll stroke myself. Discard 20 cards to untap my Tolarian Academy a whole bunch more times with Mind Over Matter, another card in combo winter decks, and just add like 5,000 mana to my mana pool with Tolarian Academy. I was this guy, everybody. This is the inception of Ryan as a Magic player, and the reason I am like I am today, because I used to do this. I would Stroke of Genius people out, and it'd be like turn 3 or 4 off of the back of Baron Master Wizard, letting me just bounce Emrakul infinitely off of a Tolarian Academy to take infinite turns to kill you by milling you. And of course, because I drew my whole deck before that, there was mana drains and Force of Wills and counter spells coming out the wazoo. So he's my first commander. He got me into the format formerly known as EDH, and he's got a soft spot in my heart because of course he's been outclassed, and of course all the dirty things that I did with him are banned now. And I thought that was fun because the format was very immature and I thought I was smarter than everybody else. That's where the joke comes from. Essentially, it wasn't very fun for anybody, so it was a deck that I didn't play very often back in the day when I only had like 3 decks. But that all existed, and I mean, that's why a lot of those cards are banned, because that's the kind of thing that you could do with them. Both in Standard at the time, in Legacy and Vintage now, and of course in Commander now. So I could gush about Baron all day, but we could talk about some other Magic cards in Urza's Saga. And we're going to have to fly through, and we're going to miss a ton, I know. I'm expecting people in the Twitter and Facebook threads to please leave me your gems from Urza's Saga, because I'm only going to have time to talk about a few. First up, big shout out to all the color hosing. If you want color hosing, look no further than Urza's Saga and maybe Legends. But if you don't have money just falling out of every hole in your body, look to Urza's Saga, because there are things like Absolute Grace and Absolute Law. Those are 2 different enchantments. For 2 mana, all creatures gain protection from black, or all creatures gain protection from red. That's Grace and Law. So there are a ton of cards in Urza's block that do color hose maybe your opponent's decks. Maybe they shut off creatures can't get damaged by black sources and you're playing like black damage stuff or red damage stuff with Absolute Law. That's very powerful. You just kind of have to find a way to work around it that the game designers at the time just weren't thinking of, and that's why this set is so powerful. I'm going to go to very next card alphabetically, Abundance. Enchantment for green 2. Instead of drawing a card, you can choose land or non-land and reveal cards from your library until you hit the chosen card type. Like in my 63 land deck, if I've got 25 land in play, I'd just choose non-land and I'll just dig until I hit absolutely anything and probably win the game. Next card, Academy Researcher. Wizard for blue 1. When it enters the battlefield, choose an enchant creature card, an aura, from your hand, put it right into play on Academy Researchers. I've seen this turn 2 get a Eldrazi Conscription. How's your 12/12 Annihilator 2 on turn 2? You think that person won that game? There's a ton of great cards in this set. I am going to skip ahead to a few that I think might be hidden gems. I like Antagonism. That's an enchantment for red 3 during each player's discard phase. So that's probably been errated to at the end of each player's turn. Antagonism deals 2 damage to that player unless one of that player's opponents was dealt damage this turn. So if you're in a Punisher deck or a group slug deck, or there's somebody that's playing Pillow Fort or has got a little bit of a fortress built up and you can't get them, antagonism them, and if they're not actively dealing damage, they're going to take damage from antagonism. So that's a cool little one. Again, I might mention some of the prolific cards, but skip over them. I'm thinking of Back to Basics. That's a very powerful card. It's in Legacy, recently reprinted in Ultimate Masters maybe. I'm looking at Carpet of Flowers. That is a very prolific CEDH card. It gives you a ton of mana for very little investment, just green. It's an enchantment. Claws of Gix is one of those 0 mana artifacts that you could have gotten mana from your Tolarian Academy. It's a 0 drop, and you can pay 1, sack a permanent, gain a life. And that includes lands. So again, in my lands deck, I'll pay 1, sack the land, gain a life, and then later on in the turn, after I've done all my land, maybe gain 20 life, I'll Splendid Reclamation them all back and get like 20 landfall triggers. Congregate was a huge card back in the day and still relatively good in multiplayer EDH, where it's an instant, that's important. For white 3, target player gains 2 life for each creature on the battlefield. I've seen a 100-point Congregate before. That's pretty good. Contamination. Whenever a land is tapped for mana, it produces black instead of its normal type and amount. So it just makes everything produce black mana, which is great. Great art, great card. It's an enchantment. You got to sacrifice a creature during your upkeep, but it's fine. We're playing black. We probably like doing that anyways. I'm going through this set here. Of course, just to make combo winter even worse, they put Superstar Ultra Storm card, combo card, Dark Ritual in Urza's Saga. Just saying. Diabolic Servitude was a reanimate spell. That was great. Energy Field is a little bit of an underappreciated gem, but I know that there's some hard locks with this card. So it's an enchantment for blue 1. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you from sources you don't control. So nobody can damage you. Okay, cool. Whenever a card is put into your graveyard, sacrifice Energy Field. I think that anything that exiles graveyards as a replacement effect, like Rest in Peace, is just a hard lock with Energy Field. So whenever a card would be put into your graveyard, Rest in Peace just exiles it. So a card never hits your graveyard, so Energy Field would never be sacrificed. So that's kind of cool. That's what I mean. Like the back in the day, the designers weren't as... Their process wasn't as refined. They didn't have as many people. They didn't have a development team. They weren't thinking about how people were actually going to use these cards. And of course, with 21 extra years of development on top of when these cards were printed, people have found ways to just destroy the game with some of these cards. Exhume is another one. Each player chooses a creature card in their graveyard and puts it onto the battlefield. So if you can get something crazy big into your graveyard, like turn 1, you exhume turn 2 before anybody else has anything good in their graveyard. That's real life right there. Couple quick hits: Exploration, Fault Line, Fecundity, Fluctuator for you cycling players. You know what I'm talking about. Gamble, Gilded Drake, Glorious Anthem. All of those cards are in this set. Glorious Anthem, I think this is the first time we've seen this card. Before Glorious Anthem, it was only ever Crusade, which gave +1/+1 to white creatures. Glorious Anthem was white 1. All creatures we control get +1/+1. This card is the reason we call +1/+1 to our team. That's why we call them Anthem effects. So not only are you maybe seeing the card for the first time, if you're new, you're getting a little bit of a Magic history lesson. This card is the reason that +1/+1 to your team is called an Anthem. Goblin Lackey, Goblin Matron, just to continue the quick hits. Great Whale. Wait until we talk about the other cards that are in the Great Whale family. Horseshoe Crab, that is a combo enabler. Ill-Gotten Gains, combo enabler. Lifeline, combo enabler. They weren't thinking when they printed cards. They weren't thinking. So Lifeline is, and I'll read the Oracle text here. Whenever a creature dies, we'll stop there. Whenever a creature dies, doesn't matter whose creature it was. If another creature is on the battlefield, return the first card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So a couple things to unpack there. Whenever any creature dies, great. So if my creature dies, if my opponent's creature dies, he's coming back. If the creature that died isn't a creature when it's in the graveyard, you still return it to the battlefield. So people have found ways to break this. You can break this with the Karn that I just talked about, that animates an artifact, it makes it into a creature. So if it dies and you still control your Karn, for example, you get your artifact back. So it's great for artifacts that have sacrifice outlets built right into them. That's the kind of stuff that, over the years, we've just found ways to abuse as Magic players have gotten smarter and the game has progressed. That's just a thing that is real life now. I think we owe it to Magic history to mention the card Morphling. It's a 3/3 for 5, and it's got 5 abilities. It's really got 4 abilities, but blue, untap it, blue, gains flying, blue, shroud, colorless, you can give it +1, -1, or -1, +1. It became Aetherling and Thornling and Torchling and Endling and Brightling. It was the first one. It was the first Morphling. So when you hear somebody call it the Aetherling cycle or the Thornling cycle, all of that is incorrect. It's the Morphling cycle because it was the first one. They had to redo Morphling because Morphling gave itself Shroud and they phased Shroud out. Couple more quick hits here. We've got Oppression, we've got Pestilence, we've got Phyrexian Processor, pay any amount of life, pay 4, make a minion creature token with that amount of life in power and toughness. Yeah, I'll make a 20/20, thank you. Priest of Titania, one of the backbones of all elf decks in every format that deck's legal in. Tap it for 1 mana for each elf you control. Reprocess, that was remade into God Eternal Bontu from War of the Spark. Sacrifice any number of artifacts, creatures, and or lands, and draw that many cards. So that's what Bontu does. And remember, you can sacrifice your own lands to draw cards. So if you got tricks to get lands back out of your graveyard into play, have at her. Draw cards. Sarah's Avatar was in here. Show and Tell, the backbone of Sneak and Show or Show and Tell in Legacy. That is a huge card. Huge, awesome card. Smokestack was in this set. Smokestack is the reason that the Stacks archetype is called Stacks, everybody. Urza's Saga. Thanks very much. Thanks for coming out. No magic for you. Forever. Smokestack. Look it up. Oh, and I just mentioned Show and Tell. Yeah, Sneak Attack is in this deck. So if somebody's playing Sneak and Show in Legacy, yeah, they're playing with Urza Saga cards. Just throwing that out there. I'm so pumped for this set. This is so awesome going through these again and it's just awesome. The card Temporal Aperture is in this set. You'll recognize that from anybody who wants to shorthand the new Urza card from Modern Horizons. His 5 ability is called Temporal Aperture. So what that means is you pay 5, just like on Urza, shuffle your library and reveal the top card from it. Until end of turn, as long as that card remains on the top of your library, you may play that card as though it were in your hand without paying its mana cost. So that's what Urza's ability does, and that used to be a card in Urza's Saga, the set, called Temporal Aperture. It's funny, Urza's other ability to tap an artifact to give you a blue mana. Essentially, what that means is you have a blue mana for every artifact you control. So that's kind of like Tolarian Academy. It's just a clever way to do that without having to tap the Urza. So it's kind of clever. Voltaic Key was in this set, and you might recognize Voltaic Key because recently printed was Manifold Key. Essentially, you pay 1 and tap it to untap target artifact. This has been a backbone card in lots of combo decks throughout history because you can get 2 activations off of 1 artifact. Windfall was originally printed in this set, popular in Nekuzar decks or other decks that want to make other people discard their hand to draw as many as the greatest number discarded that way. Wheel type decks, we call them. Last 2 cards. First one, Peregrine Drake. It's a Drake, 2/2 flyer, costs 5 mana. When it enters the battlefield, untap up to 5 lands. So you can break this in a myriad of ways, either by untapping lands that produce more than 1 mana, like your Gaia's Cradle or your Tolarian Academy, or by making the Peregrine Drake or the Great Whale or other cards that we're going to talk about in the future, by making them cost less than 5 in this example. Maybe he costs 4, and then you net 1 land on that transaction. If you can maybe bounce him to your hand for that 1 extra mana, then you can cast him again for 4 and untap 5. Bounce him, untap 5, pay him for 4 with that 1 extra mana, bounce him. You can do this ad nauseum and get infinite enter the battlefield triggers. I don't know, maybe that's good in my Animar deck. I don't know. Great Whale's the same, except instead of 5 mana, I think it's 7 mana. We'll talk about a couple more in the future as well that are in other Urza sets. Final card I want to talk about today, my favorite card in all of existence of all time. I did a print of it. It's hanging on my wall in my studio. The actual art, signed by Ron Spencer, not the original print, signed by Ron Spencer, right beside me in Studio CCO. Yawgmoth's Will. Sorcery for black 2. Until end of turn, you may play cards from your graveyard. Okay, if a card will be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile that card instead. Wow. If this could potentially be considered the 10th Power 9 card in some people's books. Maybe if there was a Power 12, others say this would be maybe the 12th one. There are very few games that you cast Yawgmoth's Will and don't just win. Excellent. And I've been on air this cast and a few others saying that worst case scenario, you play a fetch land out of your graveyard and maybe get with your swamp that you got from your fetch land, you can play your Sol Ring that somebody destroyed on turn 1 with a Vandal Blast. Baseline, you've gotten your Sol Ring back and you've went mana neutral because you got your land drop and a Sol Ring for your 3 mana card. And believe it or not, getting your Sol Ring back after somebody thinks they've dispatched it effectively leads to game wins. It does. Best case scenario, you combo out and destroy everybody's whole life the very instance that you cast Yawgmoth's Will. It's so excellent to be able to reuse cards from your graveyard. You're breaking the fundamental rule of Commander by getting a second copy of all of your best stuff that you've already cast this game. It's my favorite card. It's a perfect card for me to end this review on. Please let me know in the comments section on the Facebook thread and the Twitter thread your Urza Saga favorite moments, quick hits, best cards, hidden gems. Love it. I love the next few years worth of sets that we're going into. Truly the golden age of Magic after we get over like the last hump of the Urza Saga debacle. And I can't wait. Before we go, huge thank you to FusionGamingOnline.com for all of your Urza Saga needs. If you are that person like I used to be, I'm smiling when I say that, so you guys know I'm joking, obviously. Huge thank you to all the patrons, patreon.com/cadpopcast. Please head over there, check out the benefits. A few bucks a month does go a long way in helping me continue to bring the show to you and eventually bring a second show per week to you. I can't wait for that to happen. I do have a ton to say about the game, as you may or may not know. But until we get to that point, everybody, thanks for being here. I'll see you next Wednesday.